Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is our first live session on the Page Builder Summit. Hopefully, everything's going according to plan. There's a whole bunch of places you could be watching it. Hopefully, it'll be somewhere like the WP Builds. I'm going to just accidentally say that over and over again. Hopefully, it'll be in the Page Builder Summit Facebook group or somewhere where you can make comments. Just a quick one on that, very, very quick one before I introduce anybody. If you are part of the commenting process and you would like your name to be revealed, please do what it says there. Go to chat.restream.io/Facebook, chat.restream.io/Facebook. Otherwise, you will come across as an anonymous Facebook user and we won't know who you are. Up to you. If you wish to do it that way, that's fine. If you discover that that's an impediment, you could just write your name as the first thing in your comment if you would like to do that. Right, okay, let's get stuck into the purpose of today's debate. I'm joined by three fine people. Firstly, on my left or right, I don't know which way, is Nick. How are you doing, Nick Diego?
Very good, very good.
Very nice to meet you. Underneath, we have Brian Gardner. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm actually kitty corner to Nick, who, there he is.
Yeah, it's not easy.
In my Brady Bunch screen.
It's not easy.
I'm doing great, yeah.
Well, we'll do the proper introductions. I'll go around in a moment, but I'm just saying hi. And hello, Paul Lacey. We know each other very well. We do this, well, we have been doing this quite regularly, haven't we?
Yeah, we certainly have. Good to be back.
Paul and I possibly will step out of the introductions quite as much as you two guys, if that's all right. Nick, tell us who you are, first of all, if you don't mind.
Hi there. I am somewhat new to, well, I've been working with WordPress since 2012. I consider myself basically a plugin developer. That's kind of how I've been interfacing with WordPress. And in June of this year, I quit my job of 10 years and I'm now doing WordPress full time. Nice. So a lot of my focus is on Gutenberg, building blocks, full site editing, all that new stuff that's coming down the line. So that's where my current focus is.
Totally squarely fits into the today's topic. If you've not heard of Brian, then where have you been? But Brian, nevertheless, you should probably introduce yourself. Tell us about who you are and where you've come along in your WordPress journey.
Yes, my name is Brian Gardner. I have been using WordPress since 2006. I am the founder of StudioPress, the co-creator of the Genesis framework, and currently, which is the exact opposite direction that Nick went, I recently joined WP Engine as principal developer advocate to build out the WordPress developer relations team.
Thank you so much. I don't know why, Paul, I said you were to introduce yourself. Please introduce yourself. That was foolish of me.
Well, it's probably a good idea, actually. But yeah, who knows what I do these days? I guess I do some web design and development for some vertical niches for agencies. I also work as freelance for Beaver Builder, help them with things like templates and design work and stuff like that. And recently as well, I was recently co-host with you, Nathan, on WP Build This Week in WordPress. And I was a traitor and I left. and then randomly, as if by some crazy coincidence, I just joined Matt Medeiros' The WP Minute as managing editor. So that's a coincidence, isn't it? And it really is. But yeah, that's what I do at the moment. Lots of different things. And I just love WordPress and the community and that sort of stuff. And I love talking about it. I guess that's what I do.
Thank you so much. So the intention of today's topic really is a free-for-all. Anybody can interrupt, talk over, whatever. It's absolutely fine. But talking about the future of WordPress. But I really want to just kick it off, if that's all right, talking about the past of WordPress. Because as my history teacher used to tell me, you ain't going to learn nothing about the future, Nathan, unless you're thinking about the past. So I was just really interested to see, why is it that you guys got into WordPress? Let's keep this really short, but why did you guys get into WordPress? What was the thing that it offered you over all the other different things? I'll just start with me. It looked nice, it was easy to use, and I could understand the underlying code. That's what drew me in 10 or so years ago. So anybody just go for it, interrupt.
I'll start then. Easy for me. I've always been the persona of people who's creating websites for other people as a freelancer or as an agency. Going back a long time, I was looking for a open source system to replace the things that I was making myself in Dreamweaver Ultradrev. I just wanted flexibility. I wanted to be able to do almost the things that I could do myself with something off the shelf to save a lot of time. And yeah, that WordPress fit the bill for that.
Nice. Okay. Let's go with Nick then.
So my original my background is in economics and math, so not web development by any means. But I was interested in it, and WordPress provided, because it was open source, because everything was so accessible. It provided a great place to start learning web development, and just cracking open those files and being able to read the PHP and extend different things. I actually started with the Genesis framework, crack open the files, and add my own stuff. And it was just, from a learning perspective, it was such a great onboarding platform.
Nice. Yeah, nice and easy to understand. Yeah. Brian?
I'm going to date myself here. Back in my day in 2006, which was like 15 years ago, hard to believe, there was very little in the way of, everything was so new back then. So there was Blogger, there was WordPress, maybe Drupal or the Joomla and Drupal, but those were more CMS-y. And so from a blogging perspective, there wasn't a whole lot like Typepad and stuff like that. But I was using Google's Blogspot, which of course, again, dates myself. Somebody just said, hey, try WordPress. It's self-hosted and you could do more with it. And at the time, I didn't know that I loved design and like to play around with CSS and HTML as much as I did. But, kind of like Nick, just kind of rolling up my sleeves and doing a little Googling and, trial and error. That's how I taught myself everything I know today. So once I tried that, there was no reason to deviate from it. Nothing else pulled me the way that WordPress did. So,
yeah. Nice. When I came to WordPress, which is a little bit later than you, probably almost a decade later than you, Brian, it's probably about 2015. At that point, page builders were basically on the market. There were kind of like shortcodey, it didn't quite show you what you wanted. There were those types. And then literally within a couple of months of me first playing with WordPress, I came across the page builder, which I still use quite a lot, Beaver Builder. And at that point, I was totally sold, because I thought this immediately solves all of my time constraint needs. I'm able to achieve things in minutes, which used to take me hours and scratching and figuring out how to do things. And I just sort of wonder if anybody is still out there anymore who is not using page builders, because it felt like there were, so perfect. It felt like when I got into WordPress, there was like these two camps emerging, this divide opening up, where there was the correct way, the WordPress way of doing things, and then there was the page builder way. And it kind of felt like those two camps fell out for a bit, and now they sort of joined forces together. So who's using a page builder, who's not, and why not?
I'll jump in first on this one. I am not using a page builder. I have never used a page builder, mainly because we built Genesis as a framework. And so our methodology of building and designing with WordPress sort of always ran alongside the WordPress way. And the way in which Genesis works, ultimately, when these page builders came out, Beaver Builder, for instance, we just made Genesis compatible with them. We didn't want to then go competing, kind of deviate from our current, value at the point, to chase a different way of doing things. And so we just made sure Genesis worked well with Beaver Builder, so you could build, your layout inside of the theme or the design. And there was that. And so fast forward a few decades, and now we're here with Gutenberg and the block editor, and essentially that's somewhat of a page builder now. And so there's just, for me, never been a need to sort of take that intermediate step.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Nick, we spoke just before we started this call. You got a similar opinion, I think.
Exactly. So I really never had to build websites for others. It was really only for myself. And all my work was focused on plugins, which kind of stayed out of the theme space. So I never really had a need to. I'm sure I downloaded Beaver Builder and all the others to play around with, but I never actually used them directly myself. So
yeah.
But there's a need for. I mean, there's definitely, page builders have value and they have a place in the ecosystem. So
yeah, Paul, those that don't know you, tell us what you're doing.
So I'm squarely in the, I'm not into the Gutenberg thing. So just to get that clear, just to be fair, I'm What was the question?
Well,
specifically?
really, it was all about,
Yeah.
you know, in my case, I came to WordPress and the page builders
Right.
were already on the market. You could pay for a solution which enabled
Yeah.
you to build things quickly. So for me, it was a no-brainer, saved me a bunch of time. If I'd have started 2 years earlier, maybe I would have got into the, you know, the template way and as
Yeah.
Brian said, the Genesis way. But
Got it.
it just coincided perfectly. So over to you.
Yeah. So for a long time, we were building sites using advanced custom fields with this thing called flexible content field, I think it was called, and a repeater, which you could kind of make your own page builder out of, which was quite similar in a way to the concept of blocks in some ways. And I've seen some people who are still doing that up until literally just a few months ago and transitioning over to blocks and everything. I remember, you know, Nathan, when you said you came in and you noticed some sort of divide as such with the page builder thing. I remember there was initially kind of like shame associated with page builders as such. You almost didn't want to admit that you were cheating. But I remember, and Brian might remember this as well, because I was using WordPress in around 2006, 2007 as well. And I remember a chap I was working with, a designer, and I was like, "We're going to use WordPress for this project." And he was like, "But I've heard about that. That's cheating, isn't it? That's cheating." And it was this concept of cheating, which was quite funny. But for me, yeah, I'm still, you know, heavily into Beaver Builder specifically. That's the one that I really like. It's not just because I kind of work for them as freelance. It's the other way around. I work for them freelance because I really liked that product and was kind of like I guess a spokesperson for people to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick, you mentioned that you obviously thought that, you know, you've got nothing against people using it. Do you see it as a sort of utilitarian thing then, that you may at some point in the future try just as a way of perhaps saving a bit of time? Because from my perspective, that's really the primary reason for doing it, is because I can achieve things in a fraction of the time than I can if I have to build it all by hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, if you look at these products, you got Elementor, Beaver Builder, they're businesses designed to get customers and create the best user experience possible. It just so happens to be sitting on top of WordPress. And so I kind of see page builders as, you know, they're so established now. We kind of have the different camps, Beaver Builder, Elementor, and people have kind of picked their lane, as Paul mentioned with Beaver Builder. And so once you become so familiar with these platforms and they're so developed now, you don't really have incentive to change. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, these products are so established, they provide a great user experience for their users, and there's a whole development ecosystem surrounding each. It's just now WordPress is kind of catching up with Gutenberg, and it's kind of creating that, or attempting to create that smooth user experience that the page builders already do in native WordPress. So I think that over time, fast forward 3 years from now, more people will probably gravitate towards something like Gutenberg if you're a brand new WordPress user than to these page builders, because before, to get that smooth user experience and everything, you had to use a page builder, or presumably, hopefully in the future, that will be internalized into core. That's just my feeling.
Brian, I don't know if you want to take that one up or...
Yeah, you know, the problem with having Nick on the show is that he's going to steal so much of what I would want to say, because we're so like-minded, and we've had so many conversations lately where we share a lot of the same sentiment, which explains why we're good friends and why we're working together. The one thing I just wanted to say, kind of following up on the page builder thing, is I realize that I'm an anomaly here, right? Because I had built Genesis, and because I love CSS and HTML so much, page builders would have actually slowed down my workflow, my productivity, just because there'd be more of a learning curve than just doing it. Like, I could roll up my sleeves and build anything I want, you know, with just like a PHP file and some custom HTML and CSS and so on. It's like, I've never had a need to go over there. And in fact, the learning curve would slow me down, just the workflow, there'd be limitations. And so like, I always just sort of did things that I could control on my own. So I don't look down on anyone who uses page builders. Robbie and his team are great at Beaver Builder and all of that stuff. So I realized, you know, there's a huge ocean of use cases with WordPress, all of which sort of kind of get grouped into, you know, page building in a sense, but how you build a page very different, whether it's custom HTML, but again, it's all about WordPress. So.
Paul, just a quick question to you. Do you see the purpose of WordPress is now to kind of basically take what the third-party systems have done, the Elementals, the Beaver builders, all of these different proprietary page builders, and try to, in inverted commas, copy that to get the same kind of functionality that is in a page builder and put it into core, or do you want it to be a different thing?
I think the thing that I think about a lot with any of these products, so like there's 4 of us here, and we all kind of got different nuanced ways of using WordPress, and it's all clearly quite different. And so as a result, there is like a perfect fit product or way of doing it for each of us. With the page builders, I think there's probably a lot of people, user personas as such, using page builders that are probably the wrong fit for a page builder. Some of them are just too complicated for people, and maybe they shouldn't be using it. And as a result, they end up ditching WordPress because they're worrying about hosting and all these other things and hacked sites and whatnot. So they go off to a different platform. If they've got a shop, they might go to Shopify, or they might go to Wix if they just want a simple website. And I feel like the way that WordPress is going is an interesting direction. I mean, not to get like political about this, but it's nobody's denying that, Automatic, for instance, is the company that chooses the core direction of WordPress, and they have like a way of kind of aligning their commercial goals with like a secondary bonus for the community, which is like, we kind of direct the software, we listen, and everybody gets the software basically. But we do align because we're the biggest contributor, we do align our direction along the lines of the services that we think we want to offer. And one of the services that, one of the things that they're very interested in is their WordPress.com product, which is a direct competitor for something like Wix. So I think that like all of us probably fall into the trap of talking about the future of WordPress in our own little bubble. So I kind of get really, I wouldn't say triggered, but triggered. I get triggered by anyone who tells me that Gutenberg is the future and then kind of pushes aside everyone else's choices, because there's not many products out there that get designed for everyone, right? A product, that would be especially with a dictator type way of creating that product. You don't go, I think this is what everyone wants, and then suddenly everybody goes, yep, what a great guess that was, and everyone just goes along with it. There's all these different subsectors, and we all like to do it our own way, and there will always be a product for it. And I think that the way WordPress is going, the core of WordPress, the kind of that side of things is going towards a kind of to recapture some people who might struggle with page builders, or might struggle with Genesis, or might struggle with code. And it's saying, we've figured out that we can make a way for you to do stuff in an easier way. The only thing is, I think that that methodology seems to be focused too much on numbers. It's too focused on the 40% of all websites, too focused on the 60% of all CMSs, and too focused on MailChimp selling for $12 billion. And I think we have to remember that the users will decide. In a couple of years' time, we can crystal ball now, but in a few years' time, it'll be history that tells us what the future of WordPress site building is. We're just sort of guessing at the moment. So I think it's great the way that it's going. I just don't think it's the future for everyone. I think it's going to grab a load of users who are going to go elsewhere, and that'll be great for WordPress. But some of us will want to do it our way, and we'll figure it out, I think.
Can I mention one point here?
You just jump right in, yeah.
So one of the things that I find is the most compelling about WordPress is the extensibility of it. Take something like Squarespace. If you love the Squarespace theme or whatever, but you want to like change something, you're already locked in. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can change if you want to. That's what drew me to WordPress, how much you can change whatever you want, right? All the hooks and filters and whatever. I think one of the things that poses a potential future problem, and the core development team is well aware of this, is that as you move more and more of this stuff into JavaScript, the ability to extend things becomes harder and harder and harder. Take a look at the navigation block, right? That was supposed to be in 5.8. It's now finally getting to a point where it's going to be in 5.9. If you want to build a simple navigation block, easy, done. They had it in 5.8. The problem becomes all the 40% of the websites in this world that extended menus and have their own system for adding stuff to menus because of the extensibility of WordPress. You also have to build that into the new navigation block, which is very complicated. So I think extensibility is going to be one of the hardest things about Gutenberg in transitioning from old WordPress to new WordPress. So
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. But Brian, you were mentioning before about how you haven't really used page builders before. You've much more got into the weeds and HTML, CSS, and so on, and PHP and all of that. What is it about the promise of the block editor that has made you think about that approach again? So you're working more now with things that you can drag in and move around, and there's a settings menu that you can fiddle with things, and you can alter the font size with a little thing instead of going into a file and altering something. Why now? What is it you feel's good about the way it's going?
So we call it the Genesis way, was really sort of on the back end, right? File editor, FTP, things of that nature. For those who live on the edge, they use the theme editor inside of the dashboard and run the risk of the white screen of death. But up until the editor or Gutenberg, it was always, and this was always sort of like not the highway or our way or anything like that. It's just the path we chose to take to build Genesis and the theme system the way that it all was. And a lot of people adopted it, and that became their norm. What appealed to me most about Gutenberg at first scared me, almost scared me into selling StudioPress specifically, but what scared me became something that didn't scare me when I realized that what that did is it offered sort of an avenue to bridge the types of ways that I would do or people in the Genesis community would do to doing it in a way that was more user-friendly. And this is sort of like the blocks and the controls within the blocks were like on the backside of the curtain, we could still build code and use CSS, or in this case, theme.json to sort of offer up the ability for people to do things on their own in a way that was, we'll use air quotes here, less scary, right? Didn't require code or learning stuff or a methodology that we could sort of opinionate and guide them in a direction towards a specific design or a use case of a theme in a way where you could sort of opinionate some things and then still let them have control to change it to kind of without having to like go into CSS and say, oh, find all the instances of such and such hex code and then change them. And, if you want to move things around, you don't have to use, Genesis hooks and filters anymore, that there's a different way to do it that's a little easier. And so like from that capacity, sort of pairing that with sort of the general aligning with WordPress methodology, I was like, okay, well, here's not a third-party system that will help facilitate this sort of transition to a new way. This is we'll call it the WordPress way of doing it. And here's how we're choosing to approach that from a user perspective.
Yeah. Paul, I don't know if you've got anything to add in at this point.
Yeah, do you know what was really interesting about that was that like there was a lot of users that did things a certain way with Genesis, and it was a very artisan way of doing things. I think the people those people like that, they'll do whatever they want, but there will be a new batch of people who would have used Genesis had they come in at that time, and they will have a similar sort of artisan approach to whatever they use. So if they use the block editor, they'll probably create their own blocks for people and for their clients and stuff like that. So I think that people will come in, and if it's, I don't think the tool that you use will change the mindset of the person using it. I think that it just gives more options to people as well. And there's someone in the comments, Natasha was saying that she is relatively new, so she's going to stick with Gutenberg and using additional code as well. And I think a lot of people will come in that way. They'll come in if they're coming in what I would call a clean way into WordPress, which means that they didn't get an advert from the hosting company or something, and then they came in, they would probably explore WordPress, and the most advertisement free route that they would see would be this block editor, and they would probably, and I think that a lot of growth will happen from that. Andrew Palmer also in the comments was saying Gutenberg is the future, and page builders will have to adapt around them. The simple fact ultimate control is obvious in so much as Gutenberg Builder pop-up appears every page. New users of WordPress will know nothing else. I do agree with that for Natasha's sort of user persona as such, but I think that the hosting companies and other routes into WordPress will give their own flavors of experience. So if you see an Elementor advert on Google Ads or Facebook Ads or something, you will probably not see much of the block editor. You'll have a kind of guided way into that through Elementor's new cloud system or something like that. If you come in via the Liquid Web Nexus, is it called, or something?
Yes, Nexus. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've bought Cadence theme. They've bought a bunch of other plugins and stuff like that. So they're going to bring you into. You come in and here's Cadence theme. Here's how it works. Here's some pre-made templates and stuff like that. So I think that the way that people will use WordPress will depend on how they come in. So if whoever markets the hardest will control the direction of those people, and then other people coming in like the clean way, like Natasha, will come in, see if it works. If it does work, they'll stick. If they don't, they'll probably have a look what else is on offer for WordPress as well before they jump off to something like Webflow. Someone in the comments also said, is Webflow really a threat? Sorry, it says treat, but I think they made a threat to WordPress and page builders. No, I don't think it is. It's just another great option for people to use. There's billions of people. Is there billions? I don't know how many people there are in the world.
7 billion, roughly.
There you go. There's lots of people in the world, and 7 billion.
Roughly.
Yeah. So if all of us give £2 each, $2 each to MailChimp, that's how much. That's how much it's sold for. That's
nice, good maths. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, it's not quite 7 plus 7 is 14. Close.
Do you, open question to anybody, do you think that I'm constantly hearing about and we'll get onto it, that the next thing which is coming in the block editor, the next thing we're going to be doing this in the future, this is just around the corner and so on. Do you think that the page builders that this summit is focusing on a lot, Elementor and Beaver Builder and all that, do you think they've reached the point where they've matured to the point where there's not really a lot left for them to do? They can take over the theming, they can do the headers and the footers, they can do it all. I'm just wondering if there's a conversation to be had there. In other words, if you get yourself into one of those page builders, is it already complete, good to go, learn it, you're all set? Whereas if you come onto the block editor side of things, you're going to have a rocky road in the next 18 months to 2 years, because everything's up for grabs. And as Anne McCarthy was talking about earlier in the summit a few presentations ago, there's still a lot to be decided. Looks like Nick's got something to say there.
No, I agree. I mean, you have Elementor, Beaver, they've been around for a good amount of time. They've solved a lot of the problems that Gutenberg is attempting to solve. There's a lot of discussion about drag and drop, right? I mean, things like that, which are still a bit challenging in the block editor. So I agree. I think that if you're entrenched in Elementor or Beaver Builder, I don't see a whole big reason to change, especially if you have clients, an agency that all your clients are running on Elementor or all running on Beaver Builder. I don't see a huge reason to change. But I do think that WordPress core needs to have a much more user-friendly experience for building websites in order for WordPress itself, without all the other stuff, to be a viable platform in the future, 3 years down the line. Yeah. But that's just my feeling.
Okay, so what is the promise of? Okay, let's just take it as read that the page builders that we've all been using for the last 8 or 9 years, some of them are newer, obviously, that they've reached a certain level of maturity, and they're going to be able to add a few features here and there, but it's going to be little bite-sized steps. What is it that's the promise of the block editor? What can it do? And I always find this curious, because there is so many little projects going on all over the place, and it's a problem of messaging. It's about getting those disparate groups of people to all get together and say, look, it can do this set of things, which is quite astonishing when you actually look at it. What is it that you feel is one or two killer punches that you think Gutenberg, so I think I'm talking to Brian and Nick here, has to offer that make it a solid excuse to start learning it as opposed to carrying on with what you're currently using?
So for me, the promise for me, and all of this is sort of through the lens of me and the way I see and do things. We've acknowledged that there's 7 billion people in the world, and that WordPress powers 40% of the internet. So I think it's really important to sort of differentiate the disparate thing that you were talking about, Nathan. There's so many different types of use cases, and there's so many different sort of ways of coexisting within the WordPress space. I mean, all of the theme companies, the page builders, they all can coexist. I mean, if everybody wants to do more, sell more, and have more users, yes. But there are very successful people out there doing several different things, and everyone coexists. So I think the danger here is trying to be, as Nick mentioned earlier, jack of all trades, master of none on some level, which is trying to do all things for all the people. Well, when you try to do that for 40% of the internet, that's actually going to work against you on some level. And so for me, like the promise that I see, my focus and heart has always been for the builders of the world, the people who range from implementers of a theme all the way to full-on Bill Erickson types or Nick types who can program and build and do things like that. I like to build tools for people who use them to build for other people. So when I see Gutenberg, I see it as a tool that I can set them up with a tool that allows them and enables them to do some things that I think are super easy. And with it being, WordPress core, and, 2 years ago, talked about this, I think, on our podcast several months ago. 2 years ago, I would not have said this because I didn't think it was ready for it. But as blocks have become a thing, and specific blocks like the group block, and it changed the way I was like, oh, with the group block, now I could present to a builder, a thing, which I didn't know what it was called until I saw Justin Tadlock's article on block patterns. And I was like, oh, now I started to sort of see the fruits of where WordPress and Gutenberg was going 3 years ago, which is enabling people to, within a few clicks, build something that they can use for themselves, build it for a client or their own agency. And so I look at this as like, okay, I now have the skill set to provide or build a product, which is sort of where Frost came from, a tool that allows people to do something quickly and easily with WordPress. Now, a page builder, an Elementor, or like Nick at Divi or whatever, they may be looking at a different subset. So their answer to this question is somewhat different, like what excites them. Obviously, the block editor does not excite anybody who owns a page builder company, but there are people, some who are watching. Mike Oliver is on this call. He's doing some awesome stuff with Tom over at GeneratePress. And I celebrate their success and celebrate the good stuff that they're doing, because they have a subset of that 40% of the internet who they're serving and communicating with and teaching sort of the way. And so I think it's a subjective question on some level, because we look at things differently.
Nick, same question to you. What is the promise? What are the one or two killer bits that you feel the block editor really has over the other page builders, if you like?
So the thing that has excited me most about the movement towards the block editor is the concept of a block. In old WordPress, you had shortcodes and menus and all this different types of data that existed on a page. And I mean, there's some argument about the concept of a block and whatnot, but I personally find it very simple and elegant, where everything's a block. And as soon as everything's a block, it opens the door for developers to do all sorts of interesting things with blocks. Because if you build something for a block, then it applies to all of WordPress. And not yet, but eventually all of WordPress. And so I think that the promise of the block editor is again, there's issues now, there's quirks now, but eventually is a much simpler way to build in WordPress. It doesn't seem that way now with needing to know React and everything. But if I was to build something that was shameless plug here. But if I was to build something that would allow you to conditionally show or hide a piece of content, I don't need to do that for, you see that now. There's plugins out there that allow you to conditionally show or hide widgets and then conditionally show or hide menus. You just build it for block and it applies to everything. And I think that opens doors for plugin developers and even, people building themes and whatnot, to build tools that is one solution that can apply to the entire WordPress application. So that's what gets me the most excited. It's not exactly theme related, but that's what gets me the most excited.
It's called block visibility, by the way. Go check it out.
Let's
just clear that up. Let's clear it up right away.
Sure.
So, Paul, I know that you've recently, you and I have been talking. If you don't know Paul and I's history, we have been doing a show much like this every Monday, and so we've been going back and forth about this every week for a couple of years or more. And over the last period of time, you've been more and more concerned about. So this is nothing to do with code. This is nothing to do with the editor. This is to do with the people. You've been concerned about the sort of rift that's basically opened up, and the fact that without the community, WordPress is nothing. I know we hear that all the time, but really at the heart of it, it is a bunch of human beings. And you've got concerns about what this whole future, this drive to make everything into a block and the way it's been done is doing to the community. Do you want to address that for a bit?
I can summarize it in just like one sentence, really, that because I want to come back to something Nick said that I kind of agree with and then have a counterpoint to as well. I think we've just got to stop saying that just we're smart enough to not have to go along with a single narrative that we is all of us. Right? That's my summary. We don't need to say we're all going to do this. You guys are going to fall behind if you don't do this or whatever, because this is how it's going to be. Let history decide that for us. That's all I've got to say, because when we start talking like that, we start excluding some of our friends, and it goes back to the kind of shame days of, if you're using that way, you're either I think it's been described as a laggard, or it's kind of you're kind of I mean, I used to work with a developer, and he used to call anyone who worked in WordPress, he called us clickers, right? Because we just use our mouse, right? But anyway, that's my thought on the community aspects of that.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I will do a plug, being as Nick Diego is happy to do a huge plug of his own product there.
Let's be clear. I plugged his own product.
No, I do have an article coming out on the WP Minute. It's like 4,500 words. I know you've actually read it, Nathan. All about that. But the summary is, can we stop just saying everyone is we? Can we just create some space, some safe spaces for us to not do it that way if we want to? Coming back to what Nick Diego said about blocks and this concept, I think that's a really good point. That the if you've only got to learn one concept, which is the concept of the block, as opposed to you need to know the customizer, the menu screen, the widget screen, maybe the page builder, the shortcodes, some options. This one's in tools, this one's in settings, this one randomly in the plugin screen. That's how you get to that setting. Then it makes a lot of sense that that the vision for that really works. I do have a counterpoint to that, which as a defeatist, I am these days, is obvious. So the problem I got is right at the beginning, when this product Gutenberg was kind of created, there was a lot of push for it to have a proper layout system. The simple concept of rows and columns or grids. Now, all the other products now, Generate Blocks is probably my favorite that's done this, but not enough people will probably use it. Not enough people will be exposed to it. Millions will, but not everyone. Is that the concept of the layout system has had to be reinvented by all the third parties. So now every single block pack has got a container block that has patched what Core didn't do at the beginning. And the problem I've got to me is that without that being in the core at the beginning, it's the metaphor I've got right is mobile phones. So you got an iPhone now, it's got a touch screen, and we've always had these touchscreen things now, and the sky's the limit. Gestures, voice, all that sort of stuff. It feels to me that Gutenberg kept itself locked into pressing buttons on a phone. So like the old Nokia phone, you had to press the button 3 times to get one letter, but it improved. We got the BlackBerry. Yeah, you could now press all the buttons, and people got super quick at that. But without the invention of the touchscreen, it stuck in that. Now, people are using the touchscreen in the metaphor because someone invented like a touchscreen that you could attach to your BlackBerry, and then you could use the touchscreen functionality. But then everyone's locked into this concept of the touchscreen thing is always connected to that. And then one day when BlackBerry bring out an actual touchscreen, you have to detach the thing that you had so many dependencies on for your phone, and you're back to reset on everything. So that's what, like, I love the concept of blocks being like this unified thing that you need to only learn one concept, but I do have like a big worry about some early mistakes maybe, or decisions that might thwart the success of it. I wanted it to be a success, and all I am these days is someone who has concerns about it.
That's okay.
Sorry.
No. You did that. This is your opinion. You are a learned person in this space. It's very nice to hear. I think Brian has something additional to add here, though.
Yeah, Paul, you just talked about like the removal of the dependencies. And I think like my minimalist tendencies is, Nathan, you had asked about like what's the future and the promise and all this other stuff. I want to create a system that removes the friction, removes the amount of dependencies, which is why, of course, I always sort of opt for just WordPress core stuff. Because I feel now, not a year ago or 12 months ago, or, longer than that ago, now I feel like we're just at that point where we can really start to do that with as little as possible. But Paul, I challenge you on some level, right? So there's a quote, Gandhi, I believe, was the originator, be the change you want to see in the world. And so like, if there's things with WordPress, whether it's the community or the software, the whatever, and I'm doing the same thing, like, hey, I don't know if I like the way this is going. So I'm gonna start having conversations with people who could influence, hey, maybe there's a different way to do it. And so my role at WP Engine, there's a lot of sort of questioning and investigating and being curious and stuff like that I intend to be doing as this thing moves forward. But to Nick's point, also the divisions and the we and all of that, like there was 1990, I just looked it up on Google. There was a song called We're All in the Same Gang. Tone Loc, Young MC, everybody sort of preaching the thing. We're all in the same game. Yeah, we're going to do things differently. But again, the WordPress community is what it is and should be all inclusive. And I don't think of anybody as a competitor. I think of them as a colleague or a co-competition, if anything, somebody that I can learn something from and just use that to sort of, build something better that not of, better than what they're doing, but just build my own better version of what I want to set out to do. So that's all I got to say about that.
Well said. Yeah, well said.
Yeah, that's good. Curious about the near term. So when I look back, go back, like I said, about 8 or 9 years when I started using WordPress, the thing that drew me in was the ease and the page builder. Where are we hoping that we're going to be in a couple of years' time? Obviously, we've called this the future of building WordPress websites. Do we still see, for example, WordPress being in the ascendancy? Do we see a 50% threshold at some point, or a 60%? Is that even a goal? Do we see other curious things coming in, like touch, voice, AI type of website building that page builders at the minute have made it ridiculously easy, but clearly there are more ridiculously easy ways to build websites, and using my voice and saying yes and no to things that I see on the screen, and move up a bit, go left a bit, no, a cat, not a dog, those kind of things. Just interested to see if we can push the boundary of what might happen in the future. Let's go to Nick first. Tough question, Nick. Sorry.
Yeah, it is. I think that the WordPress ecosystem is big enough that not everybody needs to be doing the same thing. And I think that, for example, I come from the hospitality background. You could probably count on your hand how many large resorts in the United States run on WordPress. It's not many. And I always question why, right? And because WordPress can do so many things. It can be a blog, it can be an e-commerce site, it can be all sorts of things. So it could run a hotel website, right? I think the future of WordPress needs to celebrate that diversity. And if people want to be building with Divi or Beaver Builder or Elementor, power to them. Let's make those page builders get even better and better. But WordPress at its core also needs to get better and provide a nice editing solution, which is Gutenberg. And so that when people come cleanly into WordPress, they have something where they can quickly spin up their own website. Now, the core WordPress should never allow you to build a hospitality website, or what those should be add-on features, whether it's through a page builder or plugins or whatever. But that's the beauty of WordPress. You should be able to do whatever you want in WordPress. You shouldn't be locked into any one thing. But I do feel strongly that the core functionality of WordPress, should get a bit more page builder-y with Gutenberg, so that if you're a brand new user, no coding experience, you can get in there, get a beautiful website at its core. So.
Yeah, that's a nice answer. Thank you. I saw you chuckling at my question there, Paul. This is a hard one, I know. Stare into the future. Get that crystal ball out.
I didn't want you to pick me first because I wasn't ready. I was like,
you got lucky. Where are we going? Yeah. What would you? Well, no, I mean it's more about it literally is crystal ball gazing. What would you like to see? I am really truly beguiled about what I can do with my phone by speaking to it, or that little box. I'm not going to say the words because everybody's devices will go off. You know the words. You say okay something or the name of a thing beginning with A. And it interacts with you, but yet it's really dumb still. But imagine all of that in a piece of software that can help you build a website, and you can literally tell it to go up a bit. That I'd rather that were red. That sort of stuff really fascinates me. So with that context, I don't know if you want to leap on that or just dismiss that as junk.
I was still thinking about what I was going to say. So, but I'm sure what you just said made a lot of sense. Nathan.
That's great.
So, I think what I'd love to see is that whatever people are using in WordPress goes through review cycles and gets better and better. So, at the moment, quite frankly, I don't think that the block editor is very good for its desired purpose. And I think it will take longer to get there because of the amount of users using WordPress. But what I want it to get to is to, at some point, be brave enough to say, okay, here's some big mistakes we've made. The IPO's happened, so we got that out the way and everything. So, now we can go, okay, let's go back a few steps. It's going to rock the boat because that's inevitable when you've got 40% or 60% of the CMSs. Can we go back a few steps and push some new concepts out? And it'll take a while for people to go on there, but basically I just want everything to improve. I want all the page builders to improve. I want WordPress to improve, and I want us all, like Nick said, just to celebrate the diversity of how we do things in WordPress, because that is the core philosophy of WordPress from the moment I first came to it. And it's been contested. Corporate things get in the way of that from time to time, but I think it's still there, and it always will be.
It's how you and I met, isn't it, at a WordPress event? It was really nice. Brian?
I don't have anything more unique than everything we've either already said or what Nick and Paul just said. I mean, we all hope, we live in a rising tide society, and that on some level, instead of knocking each other down and pointing out flaws and planks and specs and things like that, that it's like, hey, we're alongside one another. And I know that's very kumbaya, and it's very easy to say, especially now that I have a job and I'm not necessarily entrepreneurial in the space. But having been 15 years as an entrepreneur in the space, I certainly looked at it through a specific lens, one in which I'm really, really thankful I don't have to do right now. And I'm actually kind of looking forward to looking at it from a different lens. It allows me to embrace sort of the open source ideology a whole lot more than I used to. And that's just what happens when, you build on a software that, is open source, but you still need to put food on the table. You have to look at it a certain way and use certain paths to get to certain places, and marketing techniques and things of that nature. And so it's kind of nice to just sit back and be like, I don't have to figure this out tomorrow, but but I can certainly help today.
Usually when Paul and I do this show, we get to drone on for a significantly more time, but we've got a hard stop in about 8 minutes, and I don't want to tread on Jennifer Bourne's toes because she's coming up in 8 minutes time over on the Page Builder Summit website. I just thought it might be curious to raise a couple of the things that came up in the chat more recently. The first one comes from Mike Oliver, who got a mention from Nick, or was it Brian, I think. He mentions why he's drawn to the block editor. He says he's drawn to the block editor right now because of its obsession with core web vitals and performance. If you can create the same design with blocks and score higher, load faster, that's a big selling point. Yeah, we didn't even get into all that, did we? But that's a really solid point. Paul, you look like you're itching to say something there.
Oh no, I agree with Mike. Yeah, I think it's feature and benefit parity. So some things in some ways of doing stuff, let's say page builders, just for instance, have better features at the moment, and then currently the Gutenberg way has better performance generally. The best way I heard that described was I think it was the co-founder of Convezio said that he found that I forgot his name. Sorry, has found that his customers would build more performant websites accidentally with the block editor. So they didn't know what they were doing, but they so happened to score much better with the block editor than, let's say, one of the other page builders or something.
That works.
But yeah, it's great. I think that's where we're at the moment. The page builders are addressing that, and then the Gutenberg is addressing the features thing. So I think we'll just merge at some point, and it'll be just like, take your pick. What suits you best?
This next one came at the moment when we were talking about what we would like to see in the future. It's so fascinating. This wouldn't have popped into my head, but it's brilliant. Multilingual WP out of the box is the dream goal for everybody for global market potential. Yeah, the ability to just have a website and it just translates itself.
It's one of the main reasons it's going to grow in the future. It's one of the only platforms that really genuinely has that as a core key value at the right at the heart. And I know Matt Mullenweg believes in that quite strongly. So I think that's good news for everyone, and good news for WordPress, I think.
Yeah. There are several more comments, but honestly, we could probably get into the weeds of that, but we'd run out of time. There are some just nice things, though. People sort of saying, great insight, guys, and so on and so forth. So thank you for anybody who's made a comment. Obviously, I'd like to thank the guests on the Page Builder Summit today, Nick Diego, Brian Gardner, and Paul Lacey. We'll just go around one at a time. If it's okay with you, just tell us what the best place to find you is, maybe just one or two simple little things. So we'll go Nick first.
Just on Twitter, Nick M. Diego.
Thank you very much. And Brian?
The best place to find me is down the street at the local Starbucks alongside the river here in St. Charles. I'm Twitter most at bgardner, also Instagram there. I've recently done more at LinkedIn just because, but briangardner.com is sort of been stale over the last year just because of all the transition and stuff like that. But as I go out to build full site editing themes, I will be sandboxing things on my website. For those who like to gawk and follow along, you'll start to see some treats there. So
very nice. That's good little bit of bait there. Paul?
Twitter is probably the best place, WP_Paul Lacey. And also I'd love to get some eyes on the article that I'm releasing in the next couple of weeks on the WP Minute, which is at wpminute.com. And,
it's a lovely read. You'll all enjoy it.
Big one.
It's a long read, but you'll all enjoy it. The only thing I've got to say is I predict that if we carry on doing this summit in a few years' time and we come back and we do yet again 4 years from now, we're still doing what's the future of WordPress, and we replay this one. Fascinating to see if there's any kernel of truth in anything that we said. I enjoyed that tremendously. That was brilliant. Lots of nice comments, lots of lovely participation. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Paul. We'll knock it on the head there. Go and check out Jennifer Bourne. She's next up on the Page Builder Summit. Bye-bye.
Sounds great.